hapa jesi ni kutulukuja Naji kufunika kwani kufunika waeza kukutamanga Waeza kukupushi ngako Life hapa zeti ni kutulukuja
A great afternoon to you, and still we continue to give you live reports from the Zambia International Trade Fair, live from our studio right here in the ongoing 56th, Zambia International Trade Fair. Right now, I'm joined by Mr. Christopher Simuntala, who is a Senior Biosafety Officer Standards and Technical Liaison. Good afternoon to you, and welcome.
Good afternoon, Alan, and good afternoon, the listeners.
National Biosafety Authority. Probably many people would be hearing this for the first time. So I'll ask you, why do you exist, and who is the National Biosafety Authority?
The National Biosafety Authority, Alan and the listeners, is a statutory body that regulates biotechnology, which involves genetically modified organisms, so commonly called GMOs, and also it promotes safety for human beings, animals, and the environment. That's the biosafety aspect. Mm-hmm. So the National Biosafety Authority, being a statutory body, is regulated by a statutory act, the Biosafety Act number 10 of 2007. That's what gave birth to us. Originally I like telling this story. In 2002, somewhere there, the then President, Levi Patrick Manawasa, received a donation from some country, and this donation was genetically modified, and it was given as food. And when it came to this country, people protested, including the president himself at the time. He said, we cannot say yes to this donation because of so many uncertainties. It had uncertainties because we didn't have capacity to, in terms of infrastructure, and capacity in terms of human resource. So if you can't have staff and you don't have infrastructure where you can test and detect, why accept something that you don't understand? So the best thing he could do was to deny that. Hence, they came up with a policy, the 2003 policy on biotechnology and biosafety, and then it was followed by the Biosafety Act in 2007. So that's what gives birth to the National Biosafety Authority, and here we are to regulate all products, all activities that may contain genetically modified organisms, including the application, and so ensure safety for human beings, animals, and the environment.
Okay, so maybe just in detail, tell us exactly what you do.
So what we do is we regulate the importation of products that may contain genetically modified organisms, and export of products that contain genetically modified organisms. We regulate research. If anyone wants to research something in genetically modified organisms, or the biotechnology behind genetically modified organisms, that may involve coming up with some new plant, or it may involve coming up with some new pharmaceutical product. So meaning anything to do with the food, feed, and pharmaceutical products, we regulate that. The laboratories that are involved in conducting research and diagnosis and any other work that may involve gene modification or biotechnology, we make sure that they operate in a biosafety manner. And what we do is that we set standards. We set standards which we follow. And also those institutions that are involved in that activity, they ought to follow such standards. So those are the standards that help us to regulate. And at the same time, we have an inspectorate wing which monitors who brings in, who is doing what in relation to genetically modified organisms and biotechnology. And then at the same time, they ensure safety for human beings, animals, and the environment. Now, that's a mouthful of a lot of things.
Yes.
So setting up standards involves a lot of things, and using of those standards involves a lot of things. But I'll cut in bits and bits so that it can be clear for the listeners and the viewers. So what it is that when standards are set, if anybody wants to import a product that may contain genetically modified organisms, they cannot bring it into the country without authorization from the National Biosafety Authority. If anyone wants to research, they want to open up a biotechnology laboratory, they cannot do that without getting authorization from the National Biosafety Authority. So it's, the National Biosafety Authority is very key and paramount in this arena, because gene technology or biotechnology has a lot of uncertainties. People can make genetically modified organisms and use them as bioweapons, you know, and those can affect human beings. People may genetically modify organisms and use them for feed, food, and pharmaceutical products. And already here in this country, we are beneficiaries of some of those products of biotechnology. And somebody can actually modify genetically modified organisms and come up with biofuels. Somebody can modify genetically modified organisms and biomine, you know. They can use it for mining elements and minerals. You know, they can use microorganisms that are genetically modified, and so many activities can be done when you genetically modify organisms. You can also use genetically modified organisms to diagnose diseases. You know, these diseases that are coming in, you need gene technology to do that. And also mitigating issues of climate change. You know, climate change has come with a lot of things. Climate change has brought diseases. Climate change has brought a lot of stress factors that require attention, and gene technology, biotechnology is a solution to that. But we don't want it to just happen like that without regulating it. We want to regulate it so that when the people begin to manipulate organisms, coming up with these different products that I've mentioned, there is no harm to human beings, animals, and the environment. So in brief, that is the operation of the National Biosafety Authority.
You are quite busy, I can tell.
We are very busy because, you know, this is a science in the now, and it attracts a lot of attention. You know, there is so much misinformation. People are confused. They will see something big and they will say it's GMO. They will see a big human being, he's GMO. You know, anything that looks different, it is regarded as a GMO, when in fact it is not true. You know, chickens that are very big, they grow in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, they are GMO. Not at all. They are not actually GMO, because what then is a GMO? A genetically modified organism. You know, each organism has genes, and those genes represent certain things. They represent certain characteristics. You know, I'm trying to make it, you know, so that everyone else understands. So those characteristics, they emanate from the genes. And in fact, those genes may express certain proteins, you know. So what people do, or what scientists do, is that they get a gene from a certain organism, because this gene expresses certain things, certain characteristics, and they want those characteristics to appear in another organism. So they can actually get that and put it into another organism for various reasons. One of the reasons could be to prevent diseases, to prevent pests, to prevent cancer, anything, you know, to whatever you can think of in lines of biological control or biology and its application. That can actually happen. Even in terms of medicine, that can actually happen. So a good example would be, you know, a BT maize. I'm sure people have heard of BT maize. BT maize is maize that has a gene from Bacillus thuringiensis. And Bacillus thuringiensis is an organism, it's a bacteria that lives in the soil. It's commonplace in the soil. Wherever you go, you just dig the soil and check, you'll find it. And kids play in the soil. So that BT has one characteristic, that if you embed it into maize, then there will be productivity, because maize is attacked by the maize stalk borers, and that maize stalk borer is a menace. It reduces productivity. But when you insert that gene into the maize, then the maize is, when it's attacked by the maize stalk borer drops and dies. You see? And yet productivity increases because the maize remains and the grains also remain. So then from that maize, you can also produce cornflakes. And the cornflakes human beings eat. When they eat, or they eat the maize, either in form of zwaya or anything, roasted maize or anything,
and it
doesn't
that component.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because that component, that gene, which was isolated from the bacteria is not harmful to human beings. And in fact, it's a protein. You know, it's like eating different proteins. You eat caterpillars, you eat pork, you eat beef, you eat beans, you know, and when you eat that, you do not react. So when we do what we call a risk assessment, that's the biosafety element. We ensure that when human beings eat, whether short-term, long-term, or medium-term, there is no effect on human beings by conducting a risk assessment.
Okay. Wrapping up, maybe you can tell us our GMO status as Zambia.
Zambia's GMO status at the moment, you see, there is an act that regulates the application of gene technology. Whether you are doing research, whether you are doing laboratory work, whether you are importing a product. So it means Zambia can only authorize genetically modified organisms if a risk assessment is conducted, and then those products must be safe for human beings, animals, and the environment.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank you for giving us an update, and I hope you're having, you know, many visitors at your stand.
Oh, we have a lot of visitors, Alan, and if there's anyone interested and they would want to come to our stand, we are actually in the Ministry of Green Economy and Environment Pavilion there, just opposite Cabinet Office. Please come there and get more information. We've even displayed some of the products of gene technology or gene modification, the cornflakes, the soups that we all eat, that which we've actually ascertained that they are safe for human beings, animals, and the environment. And, you know, it doesn't leave out pharmaceutical products. Pharmaceutical products like insulin, pharmaceutical products like the COVID vaccines that we are using, those that are genetically modified like AstraZeneca, J&J, the Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and Moderna. We've done a risk assessment in as far as the modification is concerned, and they've been deemed safe for human beings, and so we are using them in our country. Not just for human beings, but also for the environment. Even if it drops in the environment, there is no effect on the environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Christopher Simuntala, my guest, who is Senior Biosafety Officer Standards and Technical Liaison at the National Biosafety Authority. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Alan. Thanks, listeners and viewers.
We'll catch up on the next interview. My name is Alan Mwale. Stand by for the afternoon news that's coming up next.
Trade Fair Weekend special offers only at your #1 hardware store. Complete toilet set including bathtub from 5,000 kwacha to 4,750 kwacha. Single toilet from 465 kwacha to 395 kwacha. New can cables 1.5 millimeters from